Hi everyone, my name is Julie. This is Keep Calm with Books and Coffee, and today I'm going to be kicking off my TBR in review for 2022. So last year. So this I am going to do a little bit differently. We're still going to do the vlog style of me trying all of the first chapters of all of the books that I still have remaining, but I did want to give you some stats because I took a look at what I purchased overall in 2022 and what I read versus what I had remaining at the beginning of 2023, and I kind of wanted to break it down for you. So I'm going to try to insert some graphs here so you can see it all as well, but I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and I know a lot of people like stats, so I thought this would be really interesting to look at, and I found it really interesting. So to start, in 2022, I bought a total of 87 books, which is a lot of books. I might have known that from my video last year where I talked about how much I spent on books last year, but I bought 87 books. That's a lot of books. Out of the 87, I read 45 of them and had 42 remaining at the beginning of 2023, still on my physical TBR. So I read over half the books I bought last year. I read them. So I was really happy with that. I think after looking at this, I realized that that is probably why my reading was so high last year. Last year I read 150 books, and this year I am currently sitting at 88. I might not even make it to 100 at the end of the year. So I think a little bit of that is rebound. A little bit of that has to do with I went into a fanfic spiral this year and spent the first 2 or 3 months really only reading fanfic, or at least reading it a lot more than I normally do. But I think also I spent a lot of time in 2022 reading books that I was really excited for, and I also spent a lot of time reading series that were buddy reads that I was excited for, and then purchasing those books. So 2022 was a great reading year, and I think you can see that in that split that I had less than half of that big number left on my shelves. So then if we look at what I've done so far in 2023, now my focus in 2023 was a lot different than it was in 2022. I was really focused on reading the oldest books on my shelves. That was a big part of my challenges, my TBRs, stuff like that. A lot of it was my backlist titles, books that I was super interested in getting off my TBR in one way or another, whether that was reading them, DNFing them, unhauling, whatever. So if we look at what remained on my shelf from 2022, what did I tackle with that in 2023? Well, I read 3 books. I DNF'd 4 and I unhauled 7. Now, a big part of the unhaul was that I tried to read Laurel K. Hamilton's books. I forget what the Guilty Pleasures series by her. I had bought a bunch of those at a book sale, and for 50 cents each, and I read the first book and didn't like it, so I decided to unhaul all of them. So that was a big chunk of the unhaul. But I did, everything else is kind of even, that I did 3, 4, and 7. So I didn't tackle this nearly as much, but I know why, because I was focused on those really books that were on my TBR that you saw from 2017 and 2018. I was really tackling those years in my TBR. So if my math is right, which hopefully it is, I have 30 books remaining on my TBR from 2022 still on my physical TBR. So, like we've been doing recently, I am going to do this vlog style where I read the first chapter and let you know what I think about it, and then decide if I'm going to keep that book, unhaul it, etc., etc. This has been a really great way for me to try these books out and see if I'm still interested in them, to see what I am, how my tastes are changing. I really don't anticipate a lot of these being unhauls or DNFs right off the bat like some of the older books were, because I have bought these recently. However, I am someone who is an impulse buyer of books, so there could be things here that don't work for me based on the writing style or whatever because I impulse bought them. So that is going to be our name of the game this time. And I just thought it would be really interesting to go over all of those stats with you before we jump into this. Anyway, this is probably going to be the longest one of the bunch because it's the most books that I have to tackle. So sit down, grab a drink, grab a snack, whatever. Have some hot cocoa, you know, sit by your Christmas tree, and we're gonna knock this thing out. So the first one is Middle Game by Sean McGuire, and honestly, I didn't expect for this to make a lot of sense going into it. I honestly expected to be confused but intrigued, and that's exactly what I am. I read the first, I guess it's like prologue. We're following two siblings and they're in like a war zone, what it seems like, and a brother trying to save a sister, and that's where it starts, and I don't know any more than that. So I'm intrigued. Like I said, I will be keeping this. I like Sean McGuire's writing style, and I expect this to be probably great, but yeah, I'm confused right now, but intrigued. So the next book was A Magic Steep in Poison by Judy I. Lin, and this is a duology about a world with tea magic, I believe, and the girl has lost her mother due to poison tea that she brewed, and then she is also going to join a competition for tea masters in order to gain a favor from the queen, the empress. I think it's empress. This first chapter was interesting. I'm not big on competition books, so this could be something that doesn't appeal to me in the end, but I'm very intrigued about what is happening within this family, like the dynamics within the family, as well as what is happening with how her mother got poisoned and all of that. So very, very curious. But yeah, this one's YA, so YA and competition, so I'm not 100% sold on this, but it was intriguing, so I'm going to keep it. Now we moved on to All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue, and this one has my attention enough that I want to keep reading it. Like, something really interesting happened in the first chapter with Maeve, our main character, and it was a nice way to kick this off with some intrigue, but we're not quite into the plot yet, so I really liked this one. Definitely going to be keeping this one, and it's much higher up on my radar than it was before I read the first chapter. Hello, so I have read the prologue and the first chapter of Improbable Magic for Cynical Witches by Kate Salesa? I'm not sure. This is interesting. It's very YA so far, so I'm not sure if this is going to be for me. However, I am intrigued by the storytelling, and I am interested because it's what it says on the tin. Like, the girl is very cynical at the start, so I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. It's also Salem Witch Trials, which seems interesting, but like critiquing the way that people profit off the Salem Witch Trials already, which is interesting, so I'm willing to give it a little more of a shot. And then the other one I have here that I tried is The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould, and this was very interesting, the first like chapter prologue bit. And then there is also, it seems like there is a ghost hunter show element to this, which like is dialogue heavy in the first chapter, and it just seemed really interesting, so this has me intrigued as well. Hello everyone, so I've read two more first chapters for this, and the first is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This was super interesting. This really grabbed me, and I want to continue on. At first I wasn't sure about it, but the deeper I got into the chapter and the author's voice, the only problem with doing this like chapter trial is that I tend to do them like one or two at a time, or you know, in like a chunk, and keep updating you in between, and sometimes I have to like take a break because I can't change gears. Like, I can't stop thinking about the last story in order to jump into the next one. So, but this one was really interesting. Excited to try that. Then Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo was the next one, and I feel like this was just intentionally confusing and not clear about what was going on. Like, it felt intentionally just, you gotta get deeper in the book. Like, it had a lot of things going on. It felt like it was leading you on to a lot of things that are gonna happen, but I don't know what they are, so it was just a very confusing first chapter. But I am intrigued. I'm not uninterested. I am interested, so excited for this one too. All of them. Well, not all of them, but those two. So we'll see what happens next. Hello, so this one is actually going to be a DNF, which I am surprised about because I normally like Kat Sebastian and her writing, But this main male character was such a dick right off the bat that I like don't want him to be redeemed. I don't have any like do you ever read something and you just get like a picture of someone or like a impression of someone and you're just like, this is not gonna be like who we have on the cover here? This guy seemed like such a dick, and he was that way with like everyone in the scene he was rude to, and I was just like, I don't know how we're gonna redeem him, and I don't really care. So I read both a little bit from the hero and the heroine's point of view, and even though I love Cat Sebastian and her like queer historical romances, this one just doesn't appeal to me with the male main character. So I am gonna DNF this one. Surprisingly, another DNF. After reading this, the writing style is just not for me. It's way too formal, way too stiff and like impersonal for my tastes. This book is supposed to be like all dragons. Everyone in this book is a dragon, which is really interesting concept, and I got this recommendation from BookTube years ago, and when I saw it on Pango for cheap, I thought it would be fun to try it because none of my libraries had it. Hoopla, Scribd, all those places that I go to kind of get books and try them without, putting a financial investment into them. So I thought I'd try it. So this didn't cost me a lot, but I'm a little disappointed that the recommendation didn't work out because I thought it would be really interesting to read a book that all the characters are dragons, but this just isn't my style of writing. All right, so I read the first bit of Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, and I want to keep this one. I really liked the writing style, and it gave me like a really clear picture of what was going on, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. Plus, this has so many awards that I feel like I would want to read more than the first chapter before giving up on it. So then I am not going to read the first chapter of Capture the Crown by Jennifer Eastep because I have read this first chapter before. This is a sequel trilogy to the Capture the Crown trilogy, which I really enjoyed last year, two years ago. And I already have plans to read this with a friend probably next year at this point. Because we're going to reread the trilogy. But so I'm not going to read the first chapter. I know I'm going to like this and have fun with it. So, hello, why yes, I did change into my pajamas. I just started The Ironworm Affair by Lilith St. Croix, and this is going to be another DNF. I really expected 2022 to not be a lot of DNFs because it's a fairly recent book purchasing year. So I really thought that I was going to have all these books that were like perfect fits. I wasn't going to get rid of anything. This one just didn't work for me. The main male character is supposed to be a Sherlock character, and those are very hit or miss for me. And I didn't know that or realize that when I read the description of this book. So it's steampunk and magical, and those are buzzwords for me, so I had decided to pick this up. I think I picked it up from like a little free library, if I remember correctly, or something like that. This book is like very damaged. Like there's a huge chunk cut out of the back cover, so I'm probably just going to donate it somewhere. But I did not realize that there was supposed to be like a Sherlock character in here, and he just came off as a bit of a jerk. So apparently I bought a lot of books in 2022 with jerk main characters. Next up is Belladonna, and I'm really hoping I like that book, so you'll find out in just a second, but it'll probably be a little bit of time for me till I know. Yes, it is still the same night. Yes, I have read more books. First is Belladonna, which, like I said, was next. This was great, super intriguing. The idea of death as a person always grabs me, and this was so interesting. I really want to read this now. And then I also read a few pages of All-Star Batman, and this art style and the concept also very much intrigued me, so I'll be keeping both of these. I don't remember what's next in the list, but yeah, I was glad to get 2 keeps after like 3 DNFs in a row. And I am really surprised by that, but I guess we can't control that. Hello, so I have lots of updates this time. I have 2 books that I am not reading the first chapter of for various reasons. The first is The Whispering Skull by Jonathan Stroud. This is the second book in the Lockwood & Co. series, and I really liked the first book, so I know I'm gonna like the writing style and the characters and everything from this book, so I'm not gonna read the first chapter. And the other one is Blood Marked by Tracy Deonn. And pretty much ditto for this. I read the first book and I absolutely loved it, so I'm not going to read the first chapter of this because I know I'm going to like it. I actually feel like I need to reread the first book because I think I read the first Blood Legendborn in the January of 2021. So it's been like over 2 years now. Close to 3? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I need to like reread the first book in order to pick up this. Then I also have 2 that I did read the first chapter of. First is Small Game by Blair Braverman. This is a nature thriller where there's a survival show, and I believe people start dying on the survival show, and we're trying to figure out what happened. It's pretty short. I really like Blair Braverman's nonfiction writing style. This seems interesting, so I'm going to keep it. It seems a little dramatic at this point, but thrillers are that way, so I'm not mad about it. It's just I'm a little, I'm just interested to see how it goes. And then the other book I have, I'm not sure about, that is Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal. And this seems like something I should like. It's like a lady detective in space. When her husband is accused of murder, she is gonna like help solve the murder, but she is actually a socialite and he's the detective. So it seems, I don't know, it seemed like a good concept, but the execution of it so far is just not working for me. I don't really love our main character. I don't feel very connected to her. Like the writing style is not, seems very, I feel very distant from all of the characters. Like I don't feel connected to anything that's going on. There's also a lot of like jargon going on about the space station that they're on. So I don't know, it feels very distant and I feel very removed from it, which is not my favorite style. So I think I'm going to keep this one. With DNFing so many of the things that I have left, I'm not sure at this point if this one is me or the book. So I'm going to like hold on to this a little longer, consider it a little more, and see what happens. But I do have a friend who DNF'd this, so I'm not sure. But this is going to stay for now. So I have 2 more updates for you. The first is Discount Armageddon by Sean McGuire. This really wasn't in question, but I did read the first chapter and I love it. I'm going to keep going with it. I love the Toby Day series, and the style in which Sean McGuire is telling this story that's very, very different is similar enough with the humor and the quips and the ideas that kind of like work here. I loved it. I'm going to read it. The other one I had was Cuba by Ada Ferrer, and I did read part of the first chapter of this, but after reading the first few pages, I remembered I read this prologue before. I stood in the bookstore and read it, and I remembered that's what pulled me in. So I was like, I'm not going to stand here and read the 20 pages. I remember I loved this and I found it interesting and it grabbed me and made me want to read this nonfiction book. So this is one I'm probably going to have to get the audiobook for. I think it was on Everand a while back, so I might check into that and see if I want to get Everand back to read Cuba, because that would probably help me a lot with the nonfiction book. Holy crap. The prologue of this was great and made me tear up. So I'm gonna keep this, obviously. That was so good. That grabbed me so well. Great writing style, great like recap of what's going on, pull us into the story and just give us like a brutal introduction to what's happening in this war and in this plague world. So incredible. So this was my first Illumicrate book that I got, and I am super interested to see where this goes, because I definitely forgot this had to do with anything like magical, let alone slipping between parallel worlds. So I'm interested to see what happens here. The first chapter was all right. It definitely didn't give me the vibe that the description did, but I'm interested to see where we go and how we get into what the description is saying. So I have my last 2 to talk about. These are my last 2 on my list for 2022. The first is Ithaca by Claire North, which it is so disappointing to me that I haven't read this yet, because I wanted this book so badly. It sounded so interesting. It's basically the story of what happened on Ithaca when, not Perseus, Penelope is left behind when her husband Odysseus goes to Troy. So I've wanted to read this for a year now, since I bought it, since it came out, and I haven't. The first chapter was excellent. I'm really interested in continuing it. And the other one I had was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan. This is also really interesting. This is definitely a different speed than Year of the Reaper and Ithaca were. Like, this is a much more purpley, flowery writing style, so that threw me off a little bit, but I really like it. I'm interested to see where we go, because this book is beautiful, and I'm really interested to see what happens with this and where the storyline takes us. But those are all the first chapters, so I will come back with stats for you before we wrap up this video. I did forget something, because I'm currently reading The Luminaries by Susan Dennard, so this is on the list of books that I didn't read in 2022 that are remainder on my TBR, but it's because I'm currently reading it and I forgot. So this is also there. Hello. So at the end of the day, what worked out was that I didn't have 30 books to read the first chapters of. I only had 24, and out of those 24, I'm gonna keep 21. I DNF'd 3. So I'm not sure where the math went wrong between the 30 and the 24, but here nor there. We're moving 21 into 2024, which I don't think is actually too bad with everything that I bought in 2022. Out of all the books that I read the first chapters of, I still think there are a couple that I could end up unhauling or DNFing, mainly Small Game and Spare Man, but I was reading those first chapters pretty late in the evening. I was tired. I had started a couple of books that day, so after, like, even though I was sort of on the fence about them when I read them, I didn't feel like I was giving them the best chance at me, like, enjoying the first chapter, so I'm gonna keep them a little longer. This occasionally happens during this series, and then I end up either DNFing them or not thinking about DNFing them again. So we'll see what happens with those, but that is it. That's a wrap on the 2023 year in reviews. That's really exciting. I really like doing this series. A lot of you have mentioned that you enjoy this as well, so I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do next year, as far as ways to kind of encourage me to read these books again, because it might just be updates again next year, because we didn't, like, I'd have read the first chapters. I might take polls. I'm not sure. If you have any thoughts or ideas about how I could mix this up next year, I'd be really interested. But yeah, it's still kind of up in the air how I'm gonna keep this fresh next year, because I really enjoy doing it, but I can't read the first chapters again, because that wouldn't help. But that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts or feelings or anything you want to share about what I talked about today, please let me know down below. You can also subscribe while you're down there. If you don't have anything you want to say, but you want to let me know you were here, go ahead and leave me a... What can I leave? What can we leave today? A leaf emoji? A snowflake emoji? Whatever weather is happening for you right now, leave me that emoji down below. But yeah, I am really excited to continue this next year. Thank you for all your support in this project for 2023. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!